What's going on, everybody? It is so good to be back on the Dad Bod Transformation Podcast. My guest today, he's a lot like me. He's a jack of all trades, master of none. He started off his career in accounting and finance, but from there he shifted to sustainable manufacturing and product development. He's the creator and host of the Sod's Law podcast and an all-around motivational guy. His mindset when it comes to failing forward is absolutely phenomenal, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. Please welcome Daniel Rosenberg. Daniel, my friend, how are you doing? Welcome to the Dad Bod Transformation Podcast.
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm going to tell you what, man. I had to get you on this show because the brothers in the Dad Bod Transformation Group really need to hear about your story and how you have done so many things throughout your life. You and I have a huge commonality between us in that we're both jacks of all trades, master of none.
Absolutely,
We've
yeah.
done a lot of different things throughout our life. So, with that being said, why don't you just kind of tell people how you've gone from being in the business world to doing marketing and development and all these other things that you've been doing?
So, a long story, as short as I can make it. I'm born and raised in a place called Manchester in the United Kingdom. You've probably all heard of it, if not for it being a very famous city, but maybe for football or soccer, as you call it over there. British born and bred, fifth generation Jewish immigrant. And my background, career wise, I've been a financial advisor, an accountant, a biomedical scientist, most recently a manufacturer of eco-friendly building products and flood protection products, and now podcaster. And I describe it as a series of success through failures or failing upwards. I've made so many crappy mistakes in my life, and they've all led to me being here today, which I wouldn't swap it for anything. Family, friends, business wise, a beautiful home. And it all comes from, well, we'll talk a bit about the failures, I guess, throughout the conversation we have, but it stems from a sense of, I guess, being dissatisfied with just doing one thing or being pigeonholed, wanting to learn more about what I'm doing, being curious, I guess, and I guess maybe being a bit impatient at the same time.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that makes sense. So now you actually started off in the business world. Am I correct? Like it was like accounting and finance stuff like that.
So let's talk about very early failures on. So it's sort of quite ingrained in the middle class culture of the UK to go on to university, or it was 15 years ago or so when I was applying. And I always wanted to be a doctor. My granddad was a doctor, and I very much looked up to him. But I was told by the people who were the sort of career advisors or guidance counselors at my high school or secondary school, as we call it here, you're just not going to get the grades. Don't bother applying. And my family are all very vocational. My dad's a dentist, my mum's a teacher, my granddad was a doctor. And it's just something that I kind of look to, not knowing much about it. So thinking, okay, I'm not going to get the grades. Maybe I'll do a secondary or supplementary degree course and then hopefully go on to do a postgraduate medical degree.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going off to study biomedical sciences. I tell people I failed a 3-year degree in 4 years, did not do very well at that, mostly due to my own lack of motivation and laziness, if I'm honest with you, serious laziness, and came out of that depressed, not knowing what on earth to do with myself. And my dad, who in the nicest, most loving possible way is quite controlling and quite sort of the patriarch of the family, went, son, right, you've cocked up. You're going off to get a job with my friend Stephen, who's an accountant. You need to earn money. You're not going to sit around moping around. Send me off to work for an accountancy firm, where I worked there for the best part of 2 years or so, trained up to be what is called here an ACCA accountant or certified chartered accountant.
Mm-hmm.
Left that company on very bad terms due to just, it was not for me. I was miserable. I threw myself into it. And like I said, I'm very curious and happy to learn, but I can get quite impatient and dissatisfied. And the ceiling of where I was going in that business was very, very low. I didn't see that for me. So I then launched my own business, as I'd trained at the same time to be a financial advisor, which is the British way of saying insurance salesman. For
Right.
some reason, there's a stigma associated to saying I sell insurance for a living, but that's what I did for about a year. And again, I was shit at it. I wasn't very good. I was giving
Right.
discounts to everybody left, right, and center. I'm not by nature, not a very good closer when it comes to sales. I loved the pitch, loved getting to know people. And then when it came to, right, and now sign the dotted line, this is how much it's going to cost you, I'd flake and I'd be crap.
Right.
And so I am at my wit's end. I'm a new dad. And I'm in the room I'm in now, actually, which was then a proper home office, thinking, what on earth am I going to do? And one of the guys I'd done some accounting and finance work for, pretty much free of charge, knocked on the front door saying, listen, we're expanding our company. Do you want to come and work for us? And that was 6 and a bit years ago.
Right.
So, and I'm now one of the directors of that company. And we now manufacture eco-friendly building products. We are one of the largest PPE manufacturers now in the UK during the COVID pandemic. So we've switched a lot of our factories around to do that. And that became something that I could throw myself into. The gusto in which I would throw myself into things previously, I've been able to continue, not because it was a particular job that I thought, this is something I can now devote myself to. I gained a different perspective growing up. I was in my early 20s when I joined. I'm now in my early 30s. And a sense of working hard for the sake of working hard rather than only working hard at what I felt I enjoyed.
Right.
And the podcast element we'll get to in a bit. But in terms of the mistakes that I've made, a lot of them have been surrounding laziness or fear of trying hard or not trying hard for fear of failure. There's a term we use in the UK that you might refer to as Murphy's Law in the UK. If something's going to go wrong, it's going to go bloody wrong. In the UK, we call it Sod's Law, in the respect that, like, why would I try hard at something if I'm only going to bloody fail? And then you end up failing anyway because you've not tried. That's me in a nutshell, or was me in a nutshell for a very long time, especially in my academic or adult career in the workforce.
Yep. Yeah. And you would say, and touching on that for just a second, when you get right down to it, it's all about the mindset. Your mind is going to find what it is that it thinks. If you have that mindset where, I'm going to try to do this, but I know I'm going to fail, then you're going to fail. You're going to find what you're looking for. But if you put it in your mind that you can succeed at something and you apply yourself, you can succeed. And that goes for business. It goes for fitness. It goes for anything, really.
Yeah.
So,
and I think one of my major mental stumbling blocks was always taking the path of least resistance. So I was very good at working hard at something I was already good at, or found it easy to be good at, or enjoyed. So chemistry in high school, I was quite good at chemistry, got straight A's. Biology, I enjoyed it. I did pretty well. Physics, I was dog shit at it because I didn't enjoy it. Not that I couldn't have been good at it. I was not good because I would not work at it. And that applies to lots of different things, even health and fitness. And we'll talk about this shortly. I would push myself into avenues or sports that I would very much enjoy or I felt were easy for me to excel at. So you see this big old Jewish nose of mine, never been broken once because I never did a combat sport, never took a martial art because, I might get hit in the nose. I've got a big nose. Never tried it. And so could I have been good at it? No idea, but I never even gave it a shot. Things like tennis, never gave it a shot. But the things that were easy to me, swimming, running, soccer, I excelled at. And in hindsight, that's nothing to be proud of.
Right.
It's like saying I'm very good at breathing. Well, okay, big whoop. Most
people are good at breathing just because it comes natural. But so let me ask you real quick. I don't mean to interrupt you, but let me ask you, because I want to touch on something that I think is a truly powerful concept that people need to grasp. You said earlier that you have, throughout your life, you have failed upward, or what I like to call fail forward. how important is it for people in all walks of life to be able to take their failures and utilize them to turn them into positives, throughout their lives, no matter what avenue that it's in? What do you think is the best way to go about doing that, and how do you think it's powerful?
With hindsight being 2020, it's
Mhm.
one of the most important things in any aspect of life,
Right.
whether it's bereavement. I lost my maternal grandmother when I was 19, and the process of her dying nearly ruined my life. Not
Hmm.
because she nearly ruined my life by dying, but I let it nearly ruin my life. It
Right.
happened like part of the university failure was excuses that, oh, my grandma's dying, I need time off. I could have
Hmm.
pushed through it. I could have used that at the time to work hard. Struggling through a career that I'm not enjoying, I could have used those shitty days in the accountancy office with no windows and said, I'm going to get out of here and do better than this bloody place. I
Right.
didn't. I put my head in my hands and I let it get to me. And yeah, so with hindsight, there's no true success in life without struggle. There isn't,
Mhm. Right.
because you can't honestly feel good about an achievement unless it's been difficult to get there, or unless you've been knocked back. My dad, I'll hark back to probably a few times when I first met my wife, who is my absolute savior and guiding light. He used to say, she's the best thing that you ever did. She's your greatest achievement.
Hmm.
And at the time, I was like, yeah, that's probably true. And I felt quite down in the dumps about myself and quite self deprecating. But only now, being together for 13 years or so, and we've been through shit together, we've
Hmm.
been through a hell of a lot together.
Right.
Only now do I feel like I've actually earned that relationship, because we've been through the crap. I hadn't earned it at the beginning just by getting her to date me or to convince someone to marry me or
Right.
procreate with me. It's looking back and saying, getting through the tough times in any walk of life is the only way to have fortitude or strength, physical, mental, or
Hmm.
otherwise.
Right. Right. So now let me ask you, with everything that you've got going on, and all that you've done throughout your life, you're a husband, you're a father. How have you been able to prioritize your health and fitness as you've gone through doing all the other things that you've done?
So as a kid, I was quite athletic. My dad was and is quite athletic, and he would push me towards sports that I was good at. So soccer being such a big deal here, I wouldn't necessarily watch it as a spectator, but I'd play it, and it was quite good. And you're always running around. Soccer's a great sport for endurance and general fitness, because you're running around like an idiot for hours on end.
Right.
And got into swimming because, again, I was very, very good at it. And I ended up swimming for my local county in Lancashire at the time where I grew up. And I was swimming 6 days a week, 3 or 4 days of that competitively. I swam water polo. So I was a very fit, active, lean little kid,
Hmm.
and got into high school. That translated into cross country running, so running track, and it just became a given that I was always outwardly very fit and healthy.
Right.
Never ever had an ounce of fat on me as a kid, something that my mum took absolute pride in, that she could fit her fingers around my wrist. I was so skinny, and I was such a scrawny waif of a kid.
Right.
And I ate like an athlete throughout my life. I just
Hmm.
eat anything. And I say my dad's fit and healthy and active. It was the focus was on the sport, not necessarily on nutrition, not
Right.
on what I was putting into my body. So
Hmm.
yeah, I was eating calories and calories and calories
Right.
and burning it all off. But then hit the age of 17, 16, 17, 18, you meet girls, you discover smoking, drinking, eating to excess, and then going off to university and having
Hmm.
that freedom, rather than sort of having your mum cooking your meals and having control over that, eating whatever I could get my hands on. But I wasn't exercising as much. I wasn't swimming anymore. I didn't swim throughout university.
Right.
And it was just a case of, I've got this mentality. I know I can lose weight if I want. I don't really put on
Hmm.
weight. I've got a high metabolism,
Right.
and still eating like a pig. And get so between the age of 18 and 22, when I get married,
Hmm.
I've not put on a huge amount of weight. I've put on weight. I've gone from maybe, well, in the UK, we measure it in stone. So
Right.
maybe weighing 11 stone, which is about 150 pounds at age
Hmm.
18, getting all the way to about 190 odd pounds worth of chub
Right.
as a 22-year-old newlywed, and I just given up on fitness altogether. And I remember on my honeymoon being very self-conscious that I was sweating a lot. I wasn't a big guy, but I was bigger than I'd ever been. And my wife said to me, we got married in the August, by the February time, I think it was, she said to me, Dan, you're snoring. I can't, we hadn't lived together before we got married.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is unbearable. Because prior to now, I was a more religious Jew rather than just cultural Jew. And that was just a traditional way of doing it. And you're snoring. I can't bloody bear it. And I'm sorry to say it, you've put on weight. You're not looking after yourself.
Right.
And it was a real kick up the backside at that time. And I was working, had a mortgage to pay, a wife to look after. And I went, right, I'm going to change my life. I don't want to be a fat pig. I don't want to be someone who's like self-conscious. I want to look good, and I don't want to snore and keep my wife up all night.
Right.
So I started going to a new 24-hour gym in Manchester near where I was working in the city centre. It was called Pure Gym. And at the time, it was a very new concept in the UK, 24-hour gym, very cheap fees. And it was just high-end equipment, changing rooms and showers. No pool, no nothing. Right. And I would go 5 days a week, crack of dawn, 5 in the morning. I'd get up, I'd drive into Manchester city centre. I'd do an hour there. And I did various different types of workouts. I did muscle and fitness gain workouts. I did 5x5 workouts. I did anything I could. And very, very quickly, I lost all that weight. And physically, and I was very proud of this, I looked a lot like Hugh Jackman in the Wolverine movies. I was just lean and ripped. I wasn't particularly bulked up, but I went from being about 190 odd pounds worth of chub, as I said before, to about 190 odd pounds of lean muscle. I'd really packed it on. And I was focused. I cut out carbs. I was eating just red meat, chicken, fish, eggs, green vegetables, eating 6 eggs for breakfast, just eating and eating and eating and eating, but exercising and exercising. And in addition to that, I was doing boot camps. I was obsessed with that. And I think I find obsession is a running theme throughout my mature part of my life.
Right.
And then we have a kid in 2013. And the obvious thing is, when you have a kid, that's the priority. Certain things have to be put to one side, and you have to be okay with that. And in some sense, that is true. From that point on, until about late 2017, my fitness and I guess binging fitness and binging laziness and excess oscillated like this over the next 3-4 years.
Okay.
And that meant that when I was fit, I was very, very fit. When I wasn't, I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without taking a breath, even though I looked not dissimilar to this.
Right.
So outwardly, people would say, Dan, you've lost weight. You look great. And I'd go, that's great. Thank you. But I'd feel like dog shit.
Yeah.
I wasn't, even when I was looking like Hugh Jackman, as I said, I wasn't focusing on cardio. I was focusing on aesthetics. I wasn't focusing on health, wellness, or fitness, or nutrition. I was just focusing on looking good in the mirror, taking a good selfie to send back to my wife saying, see, I'm not snoring anymore. I'm doing great. And in August 2017, I was working for the company I'm running now, the construction product side of things. And I was building on my own a gigantic sandbag retaining wall as like a display for a trade show. And all the lads in the yard were saying, right, do you need a hand? I'm like, no, I can do it myself. I'm great. Yes, I haven't worked out for a few months and I've been drinking heavily for years and eating sugary snacks and treats and candy for months. I can do it. Cue maybe a 10-hour work day in the August sun. And I felt like crap. I'd done myself in. I was exhausted. My back was sore.
Right.
I was maybe a 36-inch waist at the time, up from a 30-inch waist at my peak fitness.
Right.
I get home and I pick up my 1-year-old son who comes running up to me, and something went. And I couldn't move. My back felt like it was a string of beads that had just released, and they just went blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I went, shit, something's happened. Within 2 weeks, I couldn't sit down on a chair. I remember we went away for our wedding anniversary at the end of August. I went to see an open air theatre production of some Shakespeare thing. I couldn't sit down. You see me doing this now, the whole time we're talking, is because now, nearly 3 years later, I've got a chronic back issue. I've got 2 slipped discs, one of which was crushed in my sort of L4, L5, S1. So the bottom lumbar, top sacral discs are just fucked. And it's because consistent oscillation of being fit, lifting heavy things, not paying mind to my own fitness. And that was a very rocky recovery. So instead of taking that and going, I've done damage to myself, I need to now change gears in my life, I went, I've screwed myself up, I'm done now. It was that Louis C.K. joke where you get to a certain age and instead of saying, the doctor saying, here's what you do to fix it, they go, you're 30, that's just shitty now. And I was like, right, I'm just shitty now. There's nothing I can do. And I spiraled. And I was always a heavy drinker. It's part of the British culture, part of Jewish culture. We like a good drink. And I was eating whatever I wanted. And at the same time now, I was being given opiates. I was being given Valium. I was being given all the wonderful things to take away the pain. Whereas in fact, it wasn't taking away the pain. It was just getting me high. It was getting me super high. And I was mixing it with alcohol and gets to, it's maybe only, was it August to December, I was full-blown opioid addicted. I was drinking every single night of the week, even though I was promising my wife I wouldn't. Only drink on the weekends. Yeah, I promise. And I'd make myself a Jack and Coke. I'm having a Coca-Cola. I'm having a Diet Coke. It's fine. It's caffeine-free. It's fine. But I'd be drinking every night. And anytime we'd be going out with friends or going to a party, going to the pub or the bar, I'd be drinking so much that I couldn't remember how many drinks I'd had, but it would never have any consequences because I was used to it. Get to December, Christmas Day, 2017. I'm heavy. I'm feeling like crap. I can't sit down. At work, they've had to give me a special desk and a special ball to sit on so I can actually work. And I throw a Christmas Eve meal for my family. And I basically try and see if my younger brother can drink me under the table. I've got a kid brother who's 10 years younger than me. He's just started university 6 months prior, or 3 months prior. And we were drinking like sailors. Like a slow cooker full of mulled wine, gin and tonics, cocktails, beers, wine, whiskey, everything. And the fact that my dad was saying the whole time, boys, slow down, made me go, go on, have another one. It'll be fine, have another one. And Christmas Day, we get a call from my mum and dad. I wake up still drunk, carry on day drinking because it's Christmas. Get a call from my mum and dad saying, your brother's woken up thinking he's having a heart attack. What? He's 18, 19. Rushed him off to hospital. He's not having a heart attack. He's got full-blown pancreatitis from excessive alcohol consumption. Now, granted, that wasn't just because of the one night with his older brother being silly idiots, but he'd been drinking heavily for months as a new student, living away from home and everything. And that was the biggest kick in the teeth, an awakening for me that could very easily have been me. I felt very responsible for what had happened to him. And although, yeah, I had a bad back, I was going down a very dark path. At no point during this process had I gone, I'm in this way because I've not been looking after myself. I'd gone, I'm in this way, and therefore, why do I care? I'm just not going to look after myself. And it took another 6 months for me to get off pills. By that time, so we're talking spring, summer 2018, I then had quit. So I quit drinking, haven't had a drink since Christmas 2017. Haven't had pills since June 2018. And then it just became about managing excess. So I then developed a borderline eating disorder. At no point did I go, I need to look after myself and exercise and keep fit. But I would cut out food groups. I would say I'm only going to eat at certain times of day with no particular structure or plan. But I felt better, but I had back pain all the time. And it took me until May 2019 to realize that what I really needed was a fitness regime. to keep weight off and focus on nutrition. I wasn't taking vitamins or vitamins. I wasn't taking supplements. I was just eating lots of protein because that's healthy, right? You want to be fit and healthy, be a man, have 6 eggs for breakfast, nothing but steak and green vegetables and chicken breasts. But I wasn't doing it with any particular path in mind. And it was in May 2019 that someone said to me, have you tried running? I used to run all the time, but I can't run. I've got a bad back, which you'll find, another excuse. I can't stay fit because I've got a bad back. I've got to take pills because I've got a bad back. I've got to drink because I've got a bad back. And I went away for a business trip because I was traveling a lot for work. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to bring my sneakers with me. I'm going to download a run app and I'm going to see if I can run, I don't know, a 5K. How difficult is that? A couple of miles. Right. And it nearly fucking killed me, but I did it. I ran a 5K on my first go. Couldn't walk for a couple of days. Felt like crap, but I felt good that I'd done it. I felt good that I'd got those sneakers on. I tied them on, no matter how reluctant I was to in the beginning, and just got out there and completed that task.
Yeah.
So between then and now, so almost exactly a year ago, gone from running a 5K every week or two to running 7, 8K once a week, 10K once a week. Now I run 10K 3 or 4 times a week. The maximum I've run now is just shy of a half marathon, just in terms of time constraints. But back onto time constraints, I've got 2 kids, nearly 3 kids now.
Right.
How do I carve out that time for myself? Well, by not being selfish with my time, but by going, I am the provider for this family, whether it's financially, whether it's emotionally. And if I'm a sorry state of a sack of back problems and pills and misery, I'm not helping anybody, especially not my wife and kids.
Right.
And so if I want to go on a 10K run and do it and it not impact my time with my family or looking after the kids, I've got to go at the crack of dawn. I've got to go when everyone else is asleep.
Right.
So really, it's a case of, what's your excuse now, Dan? Well, there isn't one. There really isn't one. Like, outside of having a physical disability or mental health issues, which I don't thankfully have, every problem I've ever had in my life stems from laziness, entitlement, and then spiraling in this self-deprecating, well, I can't do it because I'm shit. I can't do it because I've got a problem with my back. Right now, I've got a chronic back issue, but I'm fitter than I've ever been in my life. I'm leaner than I've ever been because I'm not lifting weights during this pandemic. I'm just running.
Right.
And another thing that I took on probably about 6 months ago was intermittent fasting. Not so that I could lose weight, even though weight loss has helped me with back pain.
Right.
But by having that non-compulsive control over my diet, knowing that I can eat anything if I want, but I can only eat it within these hours. And realistically, because I'm trying to be well, I'm only eating unprocessed food.
Yeah.
You won't catch me eating chips. I'll eat potatoes. I'll cook them with dinner with extra virgin olive oil or full fat, grass fed, hopefully raw butter if I can get it. I'll eat anything, but I won't eat refined sugars if I can help it. I won't eat anything that's processed. No more ketchup, no more sauces, condiments. Anything I'm cooking with is as raw as it can get or as unprocessed as it can get.
Yeah.
So going down from, we're talking nearly 200 pounds a couple of years ago. I weighed myself in advance of this podcast because I don't actually weigh myself very often.
Right.
I'm just under 195 pounds. Where is it? Sorry, no, I've just worked out 168 pounds now. And I've got a 32-inch waist. I don't notice my back problems unless I'm sitting down in a chair for too long. And I can have my son, who's 4, on my shoulders when we go for a walk to the park.
Yeah.
I can go for a run for an hour and a half and hit those milestones and battle through the struggle. Because trust me, every single time I go out, I don't want to put my shoes on. I don't want to do it. My alarm goes off at 5 a.m. I don't want to get up. But I know if I don't get up, if I don't get out, then I'm going to feel way worse than slightly sleepy.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that killed me was the fact that I was told you'll never be able to put your kids on your shoulders again. All because you've been a lazy bastard.
Right.
And that was it. That was it, really.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's really important. And that's one of the things about the Dad Bod Transformation Group is the fact that so many of the guys that have joined the group, looking for motivation and support and things like that, they joined because they've either hit a wall or they've had some kind of moment that has been a real wake up call for them, and they realize that they're not doing the best that they could do by their family, by their wife and by their
Yeah.
kids. Because if you're not healthy, how can you be there for your family? How can you be an example for your family?
Yeah.
Most young men and even young women have a tendency to look up to their father as far as the person that's the strong one, the one that's always there and is physically capable to handle anything that comes at them. And when you let yourself get out of shape, um, you put yourself in a position where you can't be that role model for your kids the way you should be. And I
Yeah.
think that
Absolutely.
you touched on some really, really powerful stuff there, because it's something as simple as putting your kids on your shoulders and being able to walk around a theme park or something. It is just the ability to be able to do that and then have that taken away from you due to your own negligence or whatever the case may be. Yeah, it can really hit home for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about the mental state of it, the attitude towards um, success through failure. This
Hmm.
was a failure of mine. I didn't get hit by a truck. I wasn't struck down with some horrible disease. I was
Right.
just a lazy sod, as we
Mm.
say, a lazy sod. It was my own fault. And the only way through it is to have a sense of fortitude and to struggle through it. It was really tough to get to where I am now, where I can run the distances I want to run and I set myself targets to beat so that it's actually something I'm motivated to do in addition to looking after my family. I feel like I'm achieving something.
Right.
But like if I look back to a year ago, we'd go for a walk and my daughter, who's now 6, would say, "Daddy, put me on your shoulders." And I'd go to grab her. And my wife, rightfully so, would say, "No, don't. Your dad's got a bad back."
Hmm.
And I'd get annoyed. I'd get angry and say, "Don't say that. Don't say." Well, you do have a bad back. For that exact same attitude, why are you even now trying to put her on your shoulders, knowing what it could do to you when you've done nothing to fix the problem you've caused yourself?
Right.
And it's definitely helped me in the last couple of years listening to a lot of motivational podcasts, whether they're motivational on purpose or not, listening to people like David Goggins,
Oh
listening to
yeah.
people like Cameron Haynes on Joe
Hmm.
Rogan,
Hmm.
listening to people who go like, "Conquer, you in a bitch. The
Yeah.
only obstacle is you." It's not as if there's a situation where I'm an army vet with my legs missing doing pull-ups and there's a tagline saying, "What's your excuse?" Like
Hmm.
I am not in that position. I am
Right.
incredibly fortunate. I
Hmm.
have the time, I have the resources. Why aren't I doing what I need to do to look after my meat vehicle
Right.
for myself and for my family?
Hmm.
And it's my own fault.
Yep.
And I think what I draw inspiration from is people saying, and not everybody has to do this, if you set yourself a goal, you should be able to be positively selfish enough to say, "I need to do this so that I can be there for my family. I
Right.
need to do this so that I'm not a liability for the
Hmm.
people I care about,"
Yep.
and do that in such a way that doesn't then impact them negatively.
Hmm.
There's no use me saying, "I'm training to run a half marathon to be a better father and husband. By the way, you're looking after 3 kids now for 3 hours." Bye.
Yeah.
It can't work like that.
Mm-mm. No, no, it's not. It's not good for the relationship, and at the end of the day, it's not good for you. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are instances where you are, if you're focused on, fitness or working out or whatever. Like for example, let's take bodybuilders. To be a bodybuilder, it is a very, very what's the word I'm looking for, it's a very, very selfish sport. You have to be 100% focused on you and only you, because it's the only
Yeah.
way that you can do the things that you need to do to achieve your goals. But us as husbands and fathers, we can't do that. And we find, and a lot of guys, and I know I'm one of them, I find myself being guilty of doing that myself, because it's like right now I am so focused on building my podcast and building my business, because I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to wipe out obesity and type 2 diabetes. and I'm going to do anything and everything I can to get my message out there. So there are times that I spend 20 hours a day here in my studio working on content to put it out on social media, working on podcasts like the Dad Bod podcast and my podcast and all these different things. And I find myself spending so much time doing this that I'm taking time away from my family. And it's causing, it's actually causing some issues in my relationship with my wife. And it's something that I need to get a handle on. But it's like, it's difficult because you know that when you're so driven to reach a goal, you've got to do A, B, and C. The balance, trying to find the balance of doing all those things and still being able to be that husband and be that father. That's the most difficult part of any journey, in my opinion. And I don't care if you've got to lose 300 pounds or 30.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. And please, for anybody listening, don't think that I'm preaching from a sense of somebody who's got it all right. I had a conversation only last night with my wife talking about how I need to engage more with what's important to her rather than me talking about podcasting, talking about running and fitness and my work and everything. You've got to be able to have a give and take if you're in a relationship with somebody else, whether it's a spouse or a kid. You can't spend your entire time talking to your kid about podcasts. You've got to talk about what's important to them. And it is difficult, but as you say, if you're only going to be able to achieve goals if you set goals and then passionately strive to hit them. But you have to be a manageable person to be around. Yeah, bodybuilding is not something I could ever get into with my life right now, even though it was something I was very keen on putting on mass as a 20-something. Right now, my focus is getting out on the roads, on the trails, and going, right, I'm going to run a 10K today. I'm going to run a 12K today. There's a place we go in Wales. It's a country on the side of England as part of the UK that's very picturesque. And there's a gigantic lake that's about 18 kilometers round. And anytime I'm there, I go, I'm going to run around that fucking lake. But I know it's going to take me, going to take me 2 3/4 hours, 2.5 hours. And if I want to have that for myself, for my own self-worth, I've got to go when it's still dark outside with a headlamp on, because it's not fair for me to say it's me time, but also I've got to work, but also I've got to record a podcast. There's got to be a give and take there. And I'm guilty of getting it wrong a lot. But I think for the idea of the Dad Bod Transformation podcast or the community around that, it's very, very important that men, we normally are obliged to not talk about how we feel, about feeling lonely or feeling left out. And we are obliged to go, yeah, I'm the breadwinner. I've got to just get it done for everybody else. And you don't consider that keeping yourself healthy is just as important as being physically present.
Yeah.
It's like being there to change a diaper or help make dinner or just go to work. Because if you drop dead at 55 of a massive coronary because you spent the entire time drinking beer, eating chips and having Twinkies or whatever, you're way more of a liability to your family long term than if you lived till in your 70s, 80s, but you were vital and you were present and you were setting a good example. As you were saying before, my dad set me a fantastic example as a kid. He is built, as we say in the UK, he's built like a brick shithouse. He's massive, my dad. I'm the shortest in my family. I'm 5'10". My dad's 6'4". I've got 2 younger brothers, both over 6 foot. And he was just he is this powerhouse of a human being. But it was a lot of do as I say, not as I do, which meant that he would be lifting weights and running, but then he'd eat an entire 250-gram tub of Nutella after dinner, or he'd be eating sweets and chocolate. And you think, yeah, I can do that as well. And he might be fine being in his late 50s doing that. Maybe he's not. I don't know. But I hit a wall before I was 30 acting like that.
Yeah.
And I want to set an example for my kids that health is the most important thing. So we talked about supplements earlier and vitamins, how I took nothing. One of the biggest things in the run-up to the COVID-19 pandemic was we ramped up taking vitamin D as a family. It turns out it's way more important than we ever could have thought.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a hormone. It's something that actually helps with, well, we know what it's got to do with calcium and bone density. But I now take vitamin D, general Wellman supplements and multivitamins, resveratrol, other types of supplements as well, specifically about immune system growth and development, zinc as well, because not that I can feel anything different for taking them, but I'm hoping that by taking them and being fit and active and well, it's going to help both areas of my immune system, not just preventing me from catching diseases or viruses, but also helping me battle them if I get them. And that is something that has not been talked about enough unless you listen to podcasts. It seems to be all the rage on other people's podcasts. But if you look on the news, conservative or liberal or down the middle, they're talking about figures. They're talking about virus cases. They're not talking about how can we look after each other.
Right.
We had an announcement today in the UK. McDonald's is opening all of its branches in the UK from the 4th of June. And people are going, ha, this is amazing. We're going to be able to get a Big Mac. Who the fuck cares?
Yeah. No shit.
Unless that's it's the most skewed perception or perspective of this situation.
Yep. Yeah. You know, when you sit back and you look at the way things that have happened with COVID and the lockdowns that have gone on around the world, more people are eating healthy now than what they ever had before, because so many people that were eating fast food, like fast food was their main staple of food, they couldn't do that anymore. So they were forced to go to the grocery store and buy food and prepare it at home. And, you know, people talk a lot about what the new normal is. I don't necessarily consider it a new normal. I think that when this is all said and done, I think a lot of the things that have developed out of this are going to stick around for a while. I think that, you know, things like a lot of things moving into the virtual space. Like I know, for example, my gym just opened back up yesterday, but even though that they're open and they are still practicing social distancing, you've got every other piece of cardio equipment is unavailable. They've got sanitation stations with like buckets and towels and stuff all over the gym floor. So when you wipe equipment before you get on it, and then when you're done with it, you wipe it again. But one of the biggest things that they instituted, and a lot of other gyms have as well, is virtual training, you know, virtual classes and things like that, because they had to during the lockdown to maintain their membership. Well, what they're finding now is so many people are enjoying that and working out at home that is something that is going to continue even after the lockdown's over. And I really think that's amazing, because so many people don't work out because the biggest issue is getting dressed and leaving the house to go to the gym. I know me personally, it's a 30-minute drive for me to go to my gym. I live in the mountains in West Virginia, and it's every bit of 30 minutes one way just to get to the gym. Now me, if the gym's open, I'll do that because the gym is my release. It's where I blow off steam. It's where I bring myself back to center. And I get past so many other things that are bothering me. But, you know, for a lot of people, you know, they don't have a problem with working out. They just don't want to have to mess around with getting ready and the drive there and the drive back and everything else.
Yeah. I really hope we do have a new normal that's better all around. The worst thing that could happen, I think I was listening to a podcast the other day where they were talking about, let's think about this as what are the weirdest Twilight Zone-esque versions of what could happen next. Right. And the worst one that they came up with was that people in a few months will just act like it never happened at all, which would be the worst.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Because people are eating better for the lockdown. People are going outside more generally. It's so much so it's I could complain about how many people I see walking around on the streets, maybe not socially distancing enough. However, the point is, this attitude towards health and fitness, I really hope has more of a focus, because what the world doesn't need is more liabilities.
Right.
We don't need more people who are putting a strain on whether, like, we have social health services here, but on each other, families, financially and otherwise. So you talk about the inconvenience of getting ready to go, the half-hour drive and things like that. The most difficult thing for me is getting my trainers on, getting my sneakers on and getting out the door.
Yeah.
I wear these compression socks because I've got shitty legs from years of doing lots of exercise and not doing anything for months at a time. And it takes me 5-10 minutes to get these socks on my legs. It drives me mad.
Yeah.
However, getting through that is part of the process, the struggle to succeed. It's not meant to be easy. We're supposed to be out hunting antelope with sticks to survive. We're not supposed to be able to just press a button and food come into our face. Like in what's the film? Wall-E, where the humans just morph into these amorphous blobs over time because they've moved the need to work for their sustenance. That is not how we have evolved or have been designed, depending on your belief, to exist. And that struggle is what makes us human. The struggle and failure to then find out the better way to succeed is what makes us human beings. And it's all for the better if more people are willing to accept that struggle to go forward.
Indeed. You know, I truly think the more I talk to you, I could probably talk to you. We could probably have several different episodes because there's so many different things that I want to touch on with you. But I think, you know, through our conversation so far, it just hits me that the title of this episode is going to be, you know, failing forward, failing upward. Because we've touched on that so much. And I think that's a powerful concept that most people don't get. They look at failure as a negative thing, and it doesn't have to be at all. Yeah. So now, before we do run out of time, though, I do want to touch on how you got into podcasting, and I because I know your podcast, you is basically centered on sharing other people's stories and inspiring others. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that and what your podcast is all about?
So I've always been a fan of music, but struggle to get over the hump of choosing what to listen to. And my brother, about 3 years ago, said, have you ever considered listening to podcasts while you're in the car? I should say the reason why I wanted to listen to stuff is because I traveled a lot for work, driving all over the UK, flying around Europe for work. And he said, have you ever listened to podcasts? And I knew there was this little purple app on my iPhone, but I'd never clicked it. Right. I didn't really know what a podcast was. Is it audio books? What is it? And he goes, no, it's just fantastic conversations about everything. And best thing is, most of them are free. So he introduced me initially to a stand-up comedians podcast in the UK called the Comedians Comedian Podcast with Stuart Goldsmith, who just interviews other comedians about their process. And it's a very good podcast. Yeah. And I kind of got a bit stale. I'd listened to almost every single one. And he goes, well, what if you like that type of thing? Have you ever heard of WTF with Mark Maron? He's a US comedian. Originally it was based on talking to other comedians, but it really is talking to people about very, very human, honest stories. He's done one with Robin Williams, Barack Obama. Go and have a listen. And like with many other things, I became absolutely obsessed. So much so I've got my own WTF with Mark Maron t-shirt. I've got his book. I've been to see him twice. Right. He's performed twice in the UK in the last few years. I've been to see him, signed my book, loved him. And from there, I've started listening to Joe Rogan, started listening to Ryan Sickler, Tom Segura, all of these other comedians, and then got into storytelling podcasts where people are just being open and honest. And I realized I'd given up on radio as a teenager because it's so fake and contrived. But podcasting, it's real. A lot of the time it's unfiltered, unedited. Like listening to Robin Williams talk about completing suicide years before he actually committed suicide was mind-blowing. Right. Listening to Todd Glass come out as gay, terrified, talking to a friend in what was a very intimate format. The fact that you and I are thousands of miles apart right now makes no difference, because people listening in, you feel like you're part of the conversation. Someone says something funny, you laugh like it's been said to you, even though you've got nothing to do with it. Right. And it's such an amazing format. And part of the reason why I describe myself as a master of none or jack of all trades is because for many years I just felt dissatisfied with what I was doing. I didn't choose my career path. I've Forrest Gumped my way through. I'm very okay. I do okay financially, but I didn't choose this. I didn't work hard for this either. Right. And I've wanted a creative outlet for years. I've tried woodworking. I've tried all sorts of different things. And there was I think it was a podcast I was listening to with David Goggins and Joe Rogan. They said, well, nothing exists until you put it out there. No matter how well intentioned you are. Oh, one day I'm going to do this, or I'd really like to try my hand at this. It doesn't fucking exist until you actually do it. And even if you do it and it's shit, at least you fucking well did it.
Right.
And that stuck with me because, as I said before, my entire life I'd done these stupid things or not done things for the sake of being scared about it going wrong or not being good or being insecure, worrying what people thought of me. And I talk for a living. The part of what I do within Gravitas, my company in the UK, is I give very large scale presentations and webinars and pitches to people. And I figured I talk a lot. Why don't I try talking to people? One better than that, I talk too much. Why don't I try listening to people? And it took me a while. My wife and I decided how to do it together. The best thing to do was to try and talk initially to people about parenting.
Right.
There's millions of podcasts about parenting from a mother's perspective, about what it's like to have a baby and the issues surrounding motherhood, because it's a big market. But there isn't much out there, or there wasn't much out there, and what it's like to be a dad. We mentioned earlier about the expectation of being a man. Who's ever heard what it's like to witness your partner have a miscarriage? Not to have a miscarriage, but what is it like to have that excitement from the man's perspective? What's it like from the perspective of two men who've tried to start their own family and the struggles and the stumbling blocks that the society you live in may put in front of you to stop you from having a family? So we thought, why don't we just start telling human stories, initially talking about parenting and fertility, because those are things that are important to us. And then it's developed into things ranging from artists, musicians, writers, comedians. We did one this week with someone who was born in Baltimore and adopted and brought to the UK, and has spent his entire life being a Brit. But when he was in his, I think, 30s or 40s, found his biological father and has started a relationship with that side of his family. So it's a human story. That the point being, we decided that, or realized that, everybody's Superman in their own story. No one thinks they're Lex Luthor.
Right.
No one thinks they're the villain in their own story.
Mm-hmm.
And no one gets the opportunity to tell their own stories unless they're given a platform to speak in their own way, at their own pace.
Yep.
And we thought, what a great way to do that and also learn how to podcast at the same time. And we call it Sod's Law, or the Sod's Law podcast, because that is my law. I'm the sod who never did anything for fear of failure, and then it went wrong anyway. So I'm trying to turn a negative to a positive in that respect.
Yep.
And we're now 23 episodes in, and it's been fantastic. I do have to stop myself from spending too much time doing it, like you were saying earlier. But it's made me feel so much more fulfilled to be able to create. And there've been episodes that weren't that great. They fell flat on their face. Or I listened to some of the first episodes and go, why did I talk like that? Why did I read from a script in that way? But I go, you know what? Leave it. Yeah, I fucked it up, but I'm happy that I did it. And each one gets better and better and better. And do you know how long it took me to learn how to talk on a microphone? It took months, because I was so scared of people saying, oh, he's got a nasal voice. I don't want to do video podcasts because I've got a wonky nose. Fuck it. Just do it. Just get it out there. It doesn't exist unless you put it out there. And there's no looking back now.
That's awesome. You know, it's you just touched on something that most people really need to pay attention to. If you are someone who has a message that you want to put out there, no matter what it is, it can be about anything. And if you're looking at starting a podcast, whether it just be audio or audio and video, I mean, you can go back and you can look at episodes of the Dad Bod Transformation podcast, and you can see how it's morphed. I mean, everything from the software that I use to the way I have my studio set up to the way that I speak to people, even the way that I would do the intros of the videos. You know, it used to be that I would write out an intro script and I would be sitting there and I'd be reading it. And I've just found that, you know, I don't even record the intros of the podcast until after the episode's done. Because if I just take your bio and I write something up and then I read that script, you know, I feel like the people that are listening to the podcast are missing out. I
Yeah.
learn about everybody that I interview when I interview them. I learn things that aren't in their bio, you know, inflections, the way they talk, all these different things. And I pull from that and I try to put their personality into the intro so people know right from the get-go what type of person it is that they're going to be listening to for the next 30 minutes or an hour, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something important that comes with the experience of trying is being able to be more discerning.
Oh
There are
yeah.
episodes that I've recorded that I'm not putting out there because I don't think I did a good enough job
Mm-hmm.
representing that person's story.
Right.
In hindsight, because we've had to change things around because of the COVID pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
this was my daughter's bedroom. So it was originally being done in another part of the house. Um, so we did interviews with people where I feel like I don't think I did their story justice by the questions I was asking.
Right.
So we've re-recorded a couple of them, or some of them we've just archived,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. That's okay because it all comes with experience, and there's no problem with having 10 episodes with one type of production or one type of intro, and then going, you know what, from this one we're doing it differently because it's a creative outlet and process. And I think people listening in are forgiving as long as you're honest. If
Yeah.
you're contrived and if you're putting on a facade or a front,
Mm-hmm.
you lose people. And I think the best thing about the podcast medium is the engagement with people. Even if it's 10 people listening or 1,000 or 1,000,000, you're engaging with those people, and being honest is the most important thing.
Yep, exactly. And if you put out if you put together a sentence and you put it out there and that sentence touched one person and it does something to flip a switch on in their head that they do something to improve the quality of their life, whether it's their health, whether it's their career path, whatever it is, then that's a power that nobody can take away from you. You know,
Absolutely.
nobody can say, well, you're not doing anything. All you're doing is turning on the camera and turning on your microphone and sitting there and talking to somebody else. But no, it's not that at all. Because if I didn't turn this camera on, if we didn't connect this call and have this hour-long conversation, some of the things that have been put forth throughout this conversation may never have been said in the way they have been said by the people they've been said by. And that is the
Absolutely. Yeah.
power of doing things like podcasts, social media content, all that type. Okay.
I think
So
adding
now,
slightly just before,
go
sorry,
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to add slightly because I know we're running out of time,
Mm-hmm.
is adding to that, not only having it said, but having it listened to.
Yeah.
So it might be beneficial to the person saying it. The fact that I'm opening up to you, I may have never said the things I'm saying before, and that might change my life to be listened to in such a way to
Mm-hmm.
be able to say, yeah, thank you for giving me this platform. But also, someone listening in might be isolated by what they're going through, might be
Right.
going, I cannot transform my life. I cannot do it. I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And they hear some schmo in Manchester go, listen, this is the shit that I went through. And someone in the middle of nowhere can, I've been through that too, or I relate to that. That
Mm-hmm.
person might be able to glean something to be able to transform their life for the better.
Yep. Yep. Without a doubt. Okay. Well, we are kind of running out of time. I do want to ask you one more question. What would be the most powerful advice you could give to any member of the Dad Bod Transformation Group when it comes to dealing with failure and being able to fail forward?
I'd probably say my best advice would be you'll never be able to look back and kick yourself if you gave it a go. If you tried and failed, you'll feel infinitely better than if you never tried at all. It's like that line from the Moulin Rouge movie. It's better than to loved and lost than never to have loved at all, or something like that. If you just got up and gave it your best, ultimately you'll be able to process what you're trying to achieve or learn how to achieve that better by just giving it a go, just getting your trainers on, just getting your gym clothes on to make that half-hour journey to the gym. Because if you don't do it, that self-deprecating, spiraling feeling of lack of self-worth is so toxic, it's
Mm-hmm.
so poisonous. And to be able to take things even one step at a time. It has to be an iterative process. I'm not saying, right, get your gym clothes out and run a 10K, run a half marathon. No. Sometimes, and I've listened to a couple of your podcasts where people are in a position whereby it's going to take them months or years to get to that point if that's the goal they're setting.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a case of just getting up and going for a walk around the neighborhood instead of getting in the car and going to the drive-thru, that's a step in the right direction. And then conquering the feeling of saying, well, I did that yesterday, I deserve a treat today. No, keep going bit by bit, because that feeling, and it's all about how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's about mental health as well as physical health.
Yep.
That process of setting and achieving goals, no matter how small, will transform your life. And doing nothing, staying where you are, well, you're only going to keep getting what you've always got. And sometimes that just isn't good enough for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's awesome. That's some truly, truly powerful stuff there. I heard one time, and I don't remember who actually said it, but the only failure in life is not trying. And I believe that to be true. If there's something that you want to accomplish, whether it is, you want to lose 20 pounds, you want to be able to run a 5K or a 10K, or, you just want to be able to go out in the yard and roughhouse with your kids and not be out of breath 5 minutes into the adventure. You're gonna absolutely lose nothing by trying, but you have everything to gain. So don't be afraid of failure, and know for a fact, without a doubt, that you're going to fail. Anytime you try to do something, when you're trying to reach a goal, you're going to fail. But it's not about how many times you fail. It's about how many times you get back up and keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, my friend, I am going to let you run. I sure do want to thank you for coming on the show. Real quick, why don't you let everybody know where they can find your podcast, your website, if you got any social media presence, whatever, let them know where they can find you.
Sure. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. So on all social media, you can find updates and information to do with my podcast, the Sod's Law podcast, with the handle @SodsPod. So Sod for Sod's Law, Sods, I should say, and Pod for podcast. I'm also on social media as Daniel_M_Rosenberg, and the podcast website where you can find everything from episodes to everything else that I do is sodspod.com.
That's awesome. All right, my friend, I'm going to have you hang on 1 second. I'm going to wrap this video up, and then I'll be right back with you to have some parting words. Okay, guys, you know the deal. This was an incredibly valuable episode. I know you guys are going to get a lot from it. Do me a favor, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell, so that way you get notified when new episodes of the Dad Bod Transformation Podcast drop. Until I see you guys again, take care, keep working, and don't be afraid to fail.